Bienvenidos a una nueva entrega de Asia en Movimiento. Como ya le habíamos adelantado en programas anteriores, estuvimos en la Embajada de Malasia con Dato Zulkifli bin Jacob, embajador acreditado de este país en la Argentina. Malasia es un país que ha sabido amalgamar diferentes culturas como sucede en varias naciones de la región. Un país que ha sorteado la crisis asiática de 1997 exitosamente y se consolidó como una nación productora de componentes para informática y centro financiero islámico. Es un país pluricultural con una importante comunidad china. Ha alcanzado un PBI estimado de $15.000 por habitante, lo que lo hace como uno de los países más elevados de la ASEAN. No los entretengo más con datos y los invito a ver la entrevista donde, sin lugar a dudas, van a conocer un poco más sobre Malasia.
Bueno, señor embajador, le agradezco la presencia en nuestro programa y quería empezar a preguntarle, quería comenzar la entrevista con una pregunta. Nosotros estamos acostumbrados a lo difícil que es gobernar países como los nuestros y suponemos que países como el suyo, con tantas diferencias de etnias, debe ser bastante más complicado. ¿Cómo ha logrado Malasia poder realizar esa convivencia?
Thank you very much. This is one very important aspect in the Malaysian life. We are multiracial, multi-religious, multicultural, and we managed to achieve our national unity. But by doing so, there is another important element. That is the stability of the country, and the political parties playing very important roles. And we have been ruled by the same government since our independence, and the same government is made up of political parties. Is a combined political parties of different ethnics. The Chinese has their own MCA party, the Indian MIC, the Malays UMNO, and there are also parties from Sabah and Sarawak. And these form the National Front. The National Front represent all parties, all people in Malaysia, and they form. They've been ruling. They won the election after election for the past 12 elections, and we are going to have another 13 election. And the Barisan Nasional, because of the same party, they managed to plan properly for the country right from the beginning of our independence up to now.
Malasia tiene un sistema de gobierno que sería una monarquía constitucional, con un rey que tiene una particularidad, que tiene una función rotativa, va cambiando cada 5 años. ¿Podría explicarnos un poco cómo es el funcionamiento de este sistema?
Yes, indeed we have 13 states in Malaysia and the Federal Territory, and altogether 14 components, 14 states you can say. And of these 13 states, 9 of them are ruled by the Malay rulers, or either sultans or the Malay Raja, they call it sultan. And this is very unique system in the world. In fact, the head of the government is the Prime Minister, and in the states the legislative is headed by the Chief Minister, and at the federal level the head of government is the Prime Minister. But the head of state is the king. So every 5 years, the rulers, the Malay rulers, the sultans will have a conference, and they will choose among themselves one to become the king of Malaysia for a period of 5 years, and it is a rotational from state to state, and usually those senior, they are very senior in line, will be chosen to become the king. And after 5 years, and apart from the king, there is also a deputy king. And wherever the king is not available to perform his duty, his deputy will act as the acting king at that time. So after 5 years, the Malay rulers will again have a special conference, and they will decide who is next to be the king or the young Di-Pertuan Agong of Malaysia.
Malasia tiene conviviendo dos sistemas jurídicos diferentes. Uno que es la ley islámica, la ley del Corán, y otro que es la ley que estamos acostumbrados nosotros, la ley con una impronta más europea. ¿Cómo conviven estos dos sistemas dentro de Malasia?
Well, in fact, the Sharia law came into the Malay Peninsula much earlier than the common law. From as early as 12th and 13th centuries. According to our history, Islam was brought first by the Arab and the Indian traders. There is also a theory saying that Islam was brought to Malaya from China. So when the Islam was introduced to Malaya, and with the Sultan of Malacca at that time adopting embrace Islam, so subjects will follow, and they brought also they practiced also Islamic law at that time. Then came the Western powers, and we were occupied. Malacca was occupied first by the Portuguese, then by the Dutch, and by the British. And when we gained independence in 1957, the common law was drafted for Malaysia to prepare for independence. So we have two, common law and Sharia law. At the beginning, there is no conflict. I mean, there is no problem because, and until now also, actually, there is no problem actually. But there were sometimes cases where there is a conflict between Sharia laws when the other parties, one of the party is not not Islam, is a non-Muslim. So in this case, there are still arguments on how to be solved on this. But according to our constitution, the provision under the constitution that the common laws will take precedence. Earlier, before that also, the matters, the constitution also says matters pertain to Islamic matters will fall under the Sharia laws. Cases are being heard on conflict interest, whether it should be heard by the Sharia court or by the common law court. It is suggested also both the Sharia judge and the judge of the common court will sit together and they will decide. This is one of the suggestions.
¿Y cuál es su opinión, y por extensión, cuál es la opinión de Malasia sobre la actitud que a veces se tiene en algunos países occidentales de juzgar como poco democrático este tipo de sistemas jurídicos?
You cannot judge or you cannot value other people's situation according to your own values. So each country we have their own priorities, their own different environment, different situation. And like in Malaysia, 60%, more than about 60% of the population is a Muslim. So we practice Sharia court, we Sharia law. And of course, from time to time, there will be a conflicting situation, but it is not necessary that things cannot be resolved. And everybody involved, right from different level of the people also will understand that the best thing will be done to solve the problem. And the question whether this is not fair or non-democratic doesn't arise.
Malasia fue un país que tenía una producción agrícola y una producción minera, sobre todo en lo que es estaño, pero esto ha quedado un poco en el pasado. Hoy Malasia lo conocemos como un productor de muchos productos de alta tecnología. ¿Cómo fue que hizo su país para hacer ese cambio?
Yes, you are right. From the beginning, at the start of our independence, or before that also, we depend heavily on export of commodity like tin, rubber. This is primary commodity. But at times we suffer because when the price of tin fell that time, or rubber, and the economy affect the country. And at that time, our leaders feel that Malaysia should move, and we should industrialize. So stage by stage, we go industrialize, and how we become successful is very interesting. That is we invite friendly countries who are developed, who are very much advanced in technology or industry, to come and invest in Malaysia. We created very good, very conducive environment with all the incentive for them to come invest in Malaysia. Number one, it will provide job opportunities for Malaysia, but the important thing is the transfer technology. So they are currently investing from the country like Japan, like Korea, like European countries, Britain, Germany, all this America. They come and invest in Malaysia, and they transfer the technology. And this is how we started. And in manufacturing, then we are now in the very highly technology industry, like biotechnology, everything. And apart from that also, we invested a lot in human capitals. That is to provide, we invest a lot in education, in training. We send thousands of Malaysian students abroad, to the west and to the east. And also we bring also courses in Malaysia. And we are now targeting to become a developed country by 2020. Ojalá.
En el sudeste asiático ha habido una característica casi común. Los países se han desarrollado, muchos, en base a un sistema capitalista, pero siempre ha habido una fuerte intervención del Estado, un papel rector del Estado en general tutelando inversiones y marcando políticas. ¿Cómo ha sido el caso puntual del Estado dentro de esta política de desarrollo en Malasia?
Well, we have many policies to develop our countries, and that involve also for the human and technology and capital investment. And we created institutions like MIDA. MIDA, for instance, is a one-stop agency that is to make easy for investor to come to Malaysia. When investor is interested to come Malaysia, apart from creating a very conducive situation, we welcome them and we make it easy for them to come. MIDA, for instance, is one-stop agency whereby this investor, when they are interested to come to invest in Malaysia, we shorten, make it very, very short time taken for them to start. The banking, everything is being taken under one roof. And also we have cooperation with all these countries of guaranteeing their investment, their repatriation of profits, and the most important thing is the create of peace and stability in the country, so that investors in the country, domestic investor, people from abroad, they feel confident to invest in Malaysia. This is important. In fact, Malaysia is the 14th most competitive country in the world right now. Very competitive, in the number 14. And within us, Southeast Asia, Malaysia is number 2. Number 1 is most peaceful. Is voted as most peaceful country, and for the Pacific region, Malaysia is number 4 as the most peaceful country. And this is some of the factors. And also, we provide skillful labor force. And in 2011, Malaysia received FDIs, foreign direct investment, amounting 10.8 billion US dollars. It is behind among Asian countries. It is slightly behind Indonesia and Singapore.
Su país consiguió salir de la crisis del 97, la crisis del sudeste asiático, rápidamente, sin demasiadas complicaciones para la profundidad de esa crisis. Hoy se está viviendo una crisis similar, pero dentro del continente europeo. Un poco a la luz de las experiencias que ha tenido Malasia y cómo consiguió sortear esa crisis. ¿Cuál es la visión que se tiene de esa crisis y qué mecanismos piensa que son los ideales para tratarla?
It is very easy. Different crises should be tackled in different situations. It is not necessary one medicine will heal every sickness, every disease we suffer. That is not the situation. In Malaysia, we were offered advices and by outside parties how to solve Malaysia, but we feel that we believe at that time, the Prime Minister at that time, Mr. Mahathir Mohamad, believed that we should stick to our remedies. First, the Asian crisis hit Thailand, and later on it hits Malaysia also when speculators was playing with ringgit. And suddenly the value of ringgit fell very much from at that time $2.8, and it fell to suddenly in few months time it becomes 4 or almost 5. Because of this, affects the whole economy of countries, and it affects the stock market, the properties, everything. And at that time, we have a policy of trying to stop ringgit, the Malaysian currency, from being traded outside, and we fixed the. We pack the ringgit, we fixed against US dollars, and that is one of the we have. This has never been done. I believe we believe that time many countries and many says that Malaysia is going to fail at the time, but finally the way we play it was also followed by other countries in the West.
Con esta crisis que estábamos mencionando anteriormente y que usted nos estaba comentando, mi interés en este momento sería preguntarle cómo ve Malasia esta situación, qué papel juega en la política exterior de Malasia, América Latina y en particular Argentina.
Malaysia as Argentina is very important to Malaysia. Argentina is an important trading partner in Latin America. Our trade volume comparatively is quite high. It's 1.4 billion US dollars in 2011, and before that in 2010 1.3 billion. Of course, it is less than 1% of total trade of Argentina, but for a country far away, and this is the trade is growing, and it shows that Malaysia and Argentina has a lot of opportunity to further develop our trade relations, and And we are also in the same position because Malaysia is a member of ASEAN, and Argentina also a member of Mercosur, the same setup. And it is a relation between Malaysia, Argentina, and Mercosur to ASEAN. And one thing, Malaysia is located in the center of ASEAN. If you travel, Malaysia in the center of ASEAN, and we are also in between two very big now economies of India and China. So this is Malaysia. So Argentina can make use of Malaysia as a hub, as a base to further venture into ASEAN markets. They can use Malaysia because Malaysia is very progressive. Malaysia has a good environment, and this is not something new actually. Malaysia, IMSA, they have opened their factory, their plant in Malaysia, and they are exporting cranes, and already 100 cranes now, more than 100 cranes overseas used from Malaysia, and they are also involved in hydroelectric project in different parts of the region, including in Malaysia. And Malaysia is now in very high technology. I mean, we cannot depend again so much on labor-intensive industry because we cannot compete with countries like Indonesia and Vietnam because they have cheaper labor. And if we continue to get involved, to consider labor-intensive, we have to import more workers. So we go for very high tech. For instance, in biotechnology, which is Argentina is very strong also. And we are strong also in IT. We have the Silicon Valley in Malaysia, and we can cooperate in many areas between Malaysia and Argentina. We have some similarity, we have some interest, and we can exchange of technology. We can share technology. But what I'm trying to push now is that for Argentina to use Malaysia as a hub if they want to export their machinery, technologies. You are very advanced in farming technology, and Malaysia is trying to develop our food industry, our agriculture, because we have been depending so much on imports from other countries. And like I say, we can go for high-tech agriculture technology because everything is all using machinery. So we can use that in Malaysia also. We can use that area. Yeah.
Si Argentina y Malasia quieren acercar posiciones, quieren aumentar ese tráfico comercial, ¿qué recomendaciones usted le haría para que los argentinos puedan entrar al mercado de Malasia, y qué posibilidades ve que Malasia pueda entrar con productos concretos en el mercado argentino, productos o servicios, ¿no?
One of the areas that Argentina may want to venture is having Malaysia as a base is the halal industry. So halal is now becoming a very, very big industry, not only in Malaysia but it's in the world. It involves billions of dollars trading, and Argentina being exporter of food products. Argentina can also try to export halal food products. It is not only for Muslim countries, but also there are people in other parts, non-Muslim countries also, who are interested in halal products. It's not, when we talk about halal, it does not mean only exporting of beef, but any packed item, any canned item, milk product, dairy products, medicine, services, banking, finance, according to Islamic law, Sharia is becoming popular. Like I say, not only in Malaysia, in Islamic countries, in the Middle East, but in other part of the world also, in Europe also now. Malaysia is now number one hub for halal industry in the world now. And for Malaysia also, you can also use Malaysia as a hub for agriculture, agriculture technology. One of the area that I might suggest that Argentina or Malaysia will look into to enhance cooperation in tourism. Both Malaysia and Argentina is tourist active countries. You have successful attracted tourists for the time being from certain areas, but now more and more Asian tourists come. Even Malaysian tourists also come to Argentina. Malaysia also very successful. We can say we are successful, and Malaysia was voted as number 10 among the 10 top most selected countries to be visited by tourists in Malaysia. In 2011, we received 24 million, more than 24 million visitors, tourist visit. It's a big number, being a small country, small population, but we have visited more than 24 million visitors, and we learn a lot also from other countries, from our neighboring countries and the other countries, and Latin America now is becoming our important market now, because we know that there are people here from Argentina who likes to visit Malaysia now. We are doing promotion from time to time. For instance, in 2010 there were 6,000 Argentines visited Malaysia, but in 2011 the number increased to 8,000 Argentines. This is good for us. This is a good sign that more and more Argentine knows about Malaysia. We like to have more Malaysians to come here to visit, and we can cooperate in the field of tourism as well.
Es interesante lo que mencionó, el crecimiento del turismo argentino en Malasia. Bueno, queremos tener algún día la oportunidad de conocer el país, que por las referencias que tenemos es realmente muy hermoso, y quería aprovechar para agradecerle que haya estado en nuestro programa y que nos haya podido acercar un poco a lo que está sucediendo en esa región de Asia.
Thank you very much for the opportunity for me to give some information about my country, and I wish the channel all the best, and we would like to invite the channel to visit Malaysia sooner or later, and thank you very much for this interview.
Bueno, muchas gracias a usted.
Acá termina la entrega de hoy de este interesante programa que tuvo a Malasia como protagonista. Como hago habitualmente, los invito a dejar sus impresiones y comentarios en nuestro Facebook, y les recuerdo que para ver los programas ya emitidos anteriormente lo podrán hacer a través de nuestra página web www.asiatv.com.ar. Me despido por hoy y los espero en 7 días con más una edición de Asia en Movimiento.